There we go, finally. Um, Good evening. Good place to start. Working on some more of this stuff from the other week. I did have to fill some more of these little cracks on the outside, so the outside of this is ready to be sanded now. So that's what we're going to do first. Not very exciting stuff, but it's a necessity. I'm going to go over these areas a little bit before I start spinning it, just so I know there's some little lumps of super glue right there. Get rid of them before we even move on, so it'll bounce over them as we go. Okay, should be good enough. As usual, we'll go in reverse. Powder dust collection for me. As usual, the first grip's going to be the longest that I sand. We got to make sure we get rid of any tool marks or any real imperfections. Like some of these edges, when you do the natural edge, you always have to go back and hit them a little bit by hand. That's generally a softer area. And always be on the end grain, of course. But if you forget to go back and do them, where it shows up is when you go to put the finish on it. And it becomes a pain in you know what. So now we should be able to just sort of breeze through the rest of the grits because we got rid of any and all tool marks. We got rid of any lumps and bumps in there. Nice light touch when you get out on the natural edge part. It wants to bounce. So it went from 120 to 150. Should be. Yeah. Small jump to 180. .240. The 240. We're going to stop and take a look and make sure we didn't leave any like 120 scratches behind. Mainly. looks like we got them all. So proceed on. On to 400. Lastly, 600. And 600, I'm going to go back around this edge. That'll always be somewhere where you've missed some. And that's it. Outside complete and ready for finish. Got some interesting grain patterns, even though I had to fill all that stuff. But still should make a fairly interesting piece. Uh-oh. Why does it look like something froze? Oh, really? Let's try something else. Oh, for real? Huh. Huh. No. Freeze everywhere. Yep. Means we gotta stop screen. Huh. That was easier than I thought it was going to be. Sort of made it for a pain, but modern technology, you gotta love it. Why it would freeze, who knows? Okay, so much for the technical difficulties. Big one. Make sure we're good and tight. And probably just over to 3, 2, 3. No, this is not going to work again. This is probably where the problem came in. Back her up a little bit. That should work. We're going to put the long tool rest. You gotta first off get rid of that stuff in there. We'll just make a nice little light cut. May very well end up going and sharpening our tool right away because that'll probably may knock the edge off of it. It's kind of the wonders of doing bowls that are too deep. Getting figured out where we can put our tool rest so it doesn't get in the way of everything else. It doesn't hit the tool rest. Like there. There. Around a little further even. There we go. Okay. And going the right way. Forward helps. Your speed up a bit. And for some reason, it's still a little bit on the out of balance side. Shouldn't be surprised at that, but I don't know that I actually screwed up the whole inside. Yeah, the tool rest decides it should move to go with everything else. Screw around long enough, mess something up. Okay, there's our cracks. Actually look like they're fairly well filled. At least good enough that if I need to fill in some more, which I probably do because there's some white spots in there, but we can do that after we get it down to the size that we want it. So now we'll just work our way down, make this thinner as we go down. Just thinking whether I wanted to switch over to a heavier gouge, but I think we'll do it with a 1/2 inch gouge. Did we get our out of balance yet? Yep. Now we can get our speed up a little bit more. It makes it a little easier out here on these natural edge parts. And I think we're going to have to turn the dust collector on, unfortunately. We can get the hose in a place that it's not going to affect too much. A little bit Probably a little bit thinner than that. We're probably about a ½ inch now, something like that. And so about another 1/8 of an inch, get it down to about 3/8 of an inch. Make it better. At least I think so. And I think we're going to have to switch over to the heavier gouges. It's giving me a little bit of a vibration. There's a considerable amount of tool hanging over the tool rest. Cracks look like they filled pretty good down in there, so that's a plus. And I can see right off the bat, no point in messing around there. We're at the finishing stages, so just take the minute or two out here and we'll go sharpen them both. Still going to be using basically the same two gouges. They're just 5/8 inch bar. Let's go over to the grinder. .40-degree gouge. It does like a very short bevel on the nose. So I might as well get rid of that before I sharpen it. There we go. Now we can get back to the job at hand. These both don't have the quick release. They have the grub screw type connections. It does take a couple seconds longer to put them back in their handles. Still easier to sharpen them without them in the handles, in my opinion. Get that tool rest height. That should be good. So now we can just keep on going down in nice little stages. Trying to match the outside curve with the inside, or the inside with the outside, rather. That's pretty uniform. This is dry, so it's not, I don't need to measure it and be all that fussy with it in most cases. So now, we're going to have to, may actually have to bring the tool rest, flip the banjo 180 degrees, and come in from the other side, so I can get the tool rest in there where I need it, which is always challenging. Not that far in. The one problem I have with doing that on a especially on like this, a natural edge piece, is now I'm always used to this being in the danger zone, so to speak, and now it's out of the road. But now I have to make sure that my hand, matter of fact, when you look in the camera, you can hardly even see my hand because it's behind the ferrule part of the tool handle. So you do have to be very aware of that. Really aware of where everything's coming around to. Make sure everything's tight, because this is a time when if it moves, we're in trouble. But yeah, I think we're good. Nice little light cut, because I don't think we actually even threw that up so far down into the bottom. There's probably a place that we're going to have to do a little bit of measuring to make sure feels like I'm quite thick. I need to go a little deeper before I curve. So we'll check it out. Yeah. And there we're a half an inch, continuing to get thicker and thicker as we go. So we'll just start back up in here. Go a little deeper before we start to curve. Really won't hurt anything if it's a little thicker in the bottom. Just give it a little bit more weight, a little bit more stability. I guess I could have taken that stage step out of there. It would have been better. You're still fat. Left a bit of a hump up in here. That's not a real great thing to have done. You're still definitely getting considerably thicker down there. Back to the 40 ones. We should be able to pick up in here and get a little deeper before it starts to curve, because that's where my hump came from. And I want to pain. That 40-degree gouge does not like to go around, start around the corner right there where it wants to hit end grain. It feels better. Now I go back into the lump-free surface I'd like to have, but I think we can go back after that with a little bit of a scraper or something or other. I think our curve is better. I think we'll make our curve right to the bottom. From there, slow and steady. Remember that's spinning at half of what it was out at the rim. Pull it up. If I try and go too fast, it wants to start to scatter. That's right there. This is a prime example of why you don't make natural edge holes so deep, because then you have trouble reaching the bottom. So we have one more toy in the arsenal. Could use our bottom bowl gouge. It's designed to be hanging way over the tool rest. I think we'll give that a go. Try and get rusted in this bottom. Looks like I have a line. Yep, still have a little bit of a line. Goes down and it sort of flattens out right there too. So that could be another place it could be a little deeper. Problem is I don't think any of my, we'll do it with the gouge because I don't think I really have any good scrapers that'll go down in that deep, safely go down in that deep. Let's put it that way. We'll just come back up in this area here and pick it up and go try and go through the bottom again. There's that line. One more little cut. Nice, really light cut across the middle. Wanted to stand up a little bit right there. And I think that's got it. Yep. I can see one thing's for sure. Some of these other cracks now have appeared. These up here could use a little bit more filling in. It's definitely still a bit of a ridge, a little bit of a not so nice of a curve right there. I think we should take care of that first. This is kind of where you can get into some trouble. I'm going to try it this way. I'd rather cut it rather than scrape it. But I need to come behind it a little ways and see whether it picks up a vibration when I do it. See if I can have the ultimate light touch. Fade away to nothing. Better. Saved a bunch of sanding. Now we're going to have to deal with these cracks. But we can listen to the noise. And pretty much done with the big tool rest at the moment. Actually, we might just use the carving stand. Talk about having dandruff. That's you do the natural edge when they're dry like that. They have a tendency that all the chips stay in the bowl and throw them right up over your head. Might actually be able to do them. Yeah, let's go back overhead. Can come in a little closer. I actually come down here an evening or two this week just to mess around with the outside ones. This one there, this one there is actually a pretty big crack. Not sure why that didn't, evidently that one doesn't show through to the outside. It's almost whether I should mix up some black. So I fill it with clear. It's not going to look as nice. So get my little cup. A lot of people don't have the patience for doing this kind of thing where you're having to stop and fill holes and all that good stuff, but I find it gives you an opportunity to try different things myself, the way I look at it. Just a little bit of charcoal black mica powder in a paper cup. Mix it up good. Get the mica powder dissolved. And should have did that first. Since this crack is so deep, I'll spray some accelerator down in the crack. It'll start it setting up quicker that way. Try and manipulate things not to make such a big mess. Leave my big fat hands in the road. I basically want this to cure from the bottom up, is what I'm trying to get it to do. Which it now is set up down through there. You dribble a little bit more in. Try and manipulate further up on the crack. I was able to zoom in without making you dizzy. You can literally see the little bubbles come up. Air bubbles being pushed up and out as it starts to set up. Okay. Try and get the dust out of them best as I can. And we just kind of put a little drop in there. Get our little popsicle stick. Try and manipulate it to go in and fill any little teeny tiny little pinholes that inevitably like to appear in cracks. And keep popping the air bubbles. Move the cup well out of the road. Should have left the activator out, would have been easier. Just to make that top surface set up. What's underneath can work its way down through. One of the other crack that has, these really just have little, I'm sure they were little air pockets or something that it's set up quicker than what it could fill, quicker than the air could escape, I guess you'd say. The activator does do its job. I mean, it literally makes that instantly set up. So I got to keep the cup out of the road. Still a little bit of unused super glue, but maybe we'll just go over a couple of these other ones just to make sure. They're just very, very tiny little thin cracks, but if they're not filled, they'll inevitably show. We'll be able to feel them. Once again, we'll just activate it, and that should be good for that. That's also why you can't, this one now sits till next week, or another day, mostly next week, probably. Because just because I activated the surface doesn't mean that what went down in that crack is definitely probably still liquid. It'll take quite a number of hours or days to actually fully set up and cure. It's not a whole lot of fun to try and clean off super glue on your tool rest and your tools and everything like that. So it's just easier to be patient. You got it this far, so basically why mess something up at this point? So another one of the science projects off to the side. And we'll go back to another science project, which is this little oak bowl, which this one shouldn't be too bad, I hope. This one sort of was the same way, that there was stuff on the outside of this one. Some little cracks that I had to fill. There's some little tool mark ridges right there. Becomes an issue. Do I want to just sand them out, or do I want to make another cut? Now let's get a smaller jam chuck for starters. I think we'd probably just sand them out. It'd probably be quicker and easier just to sand them and be done with it. No, that's not the one for that. Huh. Guess I don't have a long one for this. Check. But no matter how many of them you never have the right one, but improvise a little bit. It works. Tailstock. More than enough mark on there. There's your little piece of foam. Seems like it's running pretty true. This one we probably can just use our scraper on, actually. Not what we will probably try first, anyhow. We got to get rid of that super glue. Traditional scraper, so it needs to be downhill a little bit. So tool rest is probably on the center line. So this can be tilted down just a little bit. And they're speed up a bit. See whether it's how true it is. Don't feel too bad. So we don't try and do, if we were using a gouge or whatever, we would try and do one swing the whole way through, but kind of learn with these scrapers that you don't really want to do that. You'll run into issues you don't want to have. Make that curve a little nicer there. Move our tool rest around a bit. Hear that lovely super glue snapping and cracking. This way. And this is up on its edge. It's rather safe to use. Safer. Easier. And it will make a nicer, cleaner cut rather than laying flat. So just a little bit up here at the top edge on the natural edge part. A little bit more speed to get it going around there. That stuff probably just wants to chip away a little bit. It's the wonders of the oak. It's left some of the cambium layer behind. So these might be this will probably be like a wire brush on the drill and actually kind of grind some of that off a little bit. But for there, that's good enough. Good enough for what it is. So now we can give it a sand. Done with the 5/8 tools, so get them out of the road. I probably can do it with the 3-inch. I think. Reverse. Dust collection. like with the other one, we'll do hit the end grain a little bit without it running. That can inevitably work for something that's going to be not so nice. Down in that crack as best as I can. Do the rest of it with hand sandpaper. And get down there pretty close. That was 240. I'm going to go and sand this little area down here, starting with the 240. But I'm not getting the whole way into that groove. And I certainly didn't sand any of this off of here. So we'll make this bead is sort of pointed now. So we'll take a little bit off the top of that. And actually makes it easier if it's going the other way, but that's okay. So that I can actually, while I'm there, I might as well do pretty much all of it. That way when I power sand down against it, it doesn't really make any difference. I'm sure we'll find some more surprises on the inside of this one too, because if there was cracks on the outside, there's a good possibility that they went the whole way through. But we'll soon find out. So 320, 400. Last but not least, 600. And 600 will go around the outside perimeter. There's always will be something that you've missed. That looks pretty good. on the inside. And the dust collector off for the moment. We'll probably end up turning it back on because this is all dry wood, so it probably will be dusty. I would be highly surprised if it isn't. That is a small truck. Lower live center. That would have a tendency to stick you in the arm or elbow, all the above. So switch over to there. Apologize for the hose, but I think it's going. I'm pretty sure it's going to have to stay there. Would be my thought. This time we were considerably smaller, so it'd take a whole lot less time, a whole lot less effort to get it down to where we want it. Sure we're on center. So we need to come up a bit. We have these stock collars, but I've never really worked on. They're just close to where I want it to be. So we'll try it without dust collection first. These won't take as long. Won't be as. This is not as hard as that hackberry. And we're able to run pretty quick right off the bat. So much for not having dust collection. Yeah, get the idea. Don't want to go down too far. I want to keep some mass in the bottom. Get it to where, make sure we're cutting cleanly. It's filled nicely there. So we're at about 3/8 of an inch. So we can afford to probably go a little bit thinner than that. It's a small bowl, so. And they're really decorative rather than anything else. A little bit heavy on the cut. We'll make it work. Now we're doing well. Thank you for the sub. Something I definitely don't see very often. I appreciate it. So we feel pretty good right there. I should be able to go a little bit further with the 40 degree. We're going to go fairly straight right there. lots of stopping and starting. Give it a feel, the old trusty finger feel. I got a little dip and a hump, so that we're definitely going to get rid of. And we're also, the reason there's a hump is because I can't make the curve with that gouge. So it's starting to get thicker as we go from there to there. So yeah, that should work. Take this down a little bit first. Now I can come back up here. I can hear where it's already a little bit thinner. It's got a different sound that spool makes. Of course, if you hear that sound, it sounds like you just scratched a potato chip. You know you're in deep dew. And it certainly wasn't the smoothest cut I've ever made. Still thickening up there a bit. This actually looks like a good place. And play around a little bit with the big fat scraper. Just have to get it in the handle. Uh, I don't know that I'd call it big guns, but yeah, it's a good size scraper. It feels like there's a little bit of a burn. So above center, tilted down to cut to center. I tried it that once. It seems like it could be down a little bit further yet, maybe. You can definitely see why Richard Raffin likes that method, because it is very. No, I need to go down some more. It's still pretty thick once I get to about there, down through the bottom. Surprisingly enough, that oak is not my always problem with a lot of the woods that I use. It wants to sort of raise, sort of pick up the grain right in that area down there, but this oak is not doing it. So that's definitely a serious plus. Certainly feels like a better curve. Yeah, all we got to do is take a little bit more out of the center, out to there, and we will be done. Feels like it's a little on the flat side. What I'm after is a curve the whole way through the bottom. There we go. There actually is some lumps up here though. Here's where you're going to be really brave. You don't push the limits too far because it's thin up there. But that little bit, even though it didn't look like I took much off, there was just some little hesitation marks is really what they are. That's picking up as it goes down in there yet. Just by my fingers. I got a nice curve, so I think I should probably leave well enough alone. But who likes to leave well enough alone? Well, each one of them, that's one of them, the angle question on a gouge or on a cutting tool or lathe tool is one of them questions of you ask 100 people and you get about 110 different angles. This scraper is, somebody just asked me and I measured it, somewhere around 50 degrees. This is a traditional scraper, so anything less than 90 degrees. Richard Raffin and some other people like to give it a longer bevel. I'm not sure that it makes a whole lot of difference on that. I use two different bowl gouges. Traditional swept pack bowl gouge would be this little guy here, which everybody seems to know a fair amount about. There's also a 40 degree nose. The wings are swept back about 40 degrees. I don't ever very seldom ever measure those wings because it really doesn't. If they're back further, it doesn't make any difference. If they get too far forward, these wings would become too far forward. Then it can become aggressive. But yeah, this 55 to 60, 40 degrees. My spindle gouge would be mainly around 40 degrees. I do have some that actually have a longer, more like 35 degrees, but my normal one would be 40, if that helps you in any way. Of course, everybody tells you, well, just try, keep playing around until you get the angle that you like, that works for you, that does what you want it to do, and, have at it from there. But it's like, if you don't have an idea where to start, then to me, you burn through tools trying to figure out, because if you start changing angles by a lot, it generally can take a lot of grinding to get to what you want. Like if you're using like knock all the pencils down. If you're using the Wolverine grinding system by one way on your grinder, you can. You're not going to ruin them. You're just going to shorten the life expectancy of them, I guess you'd say, more so than ruin them. there's a real simple web page that I can. You got a pencil to write it down. A fellow by the name of Rudolph Lopez. He is from Florida. Super nice guy. I've actually went and taken classes with him, and if you go over to his web page, he has a very simple, it's in a PDF layout thing. You can print it out on a piece of paper, put it on a piece of like 1/4 inch plywood or something along those lines, something whatever would suit you when it comes to that, and it'll give you the simple setup for the Wolverine jig to do both the grinds I just said about. It'll do um, the traditional Irish grind, Ellsworth grind, whatever you want to call it. I would just call it the swept back grind bowl gouge, as well as the 40-40 bowl gouge, all done on the Wolverine system. Actually, I use that. I made one of them. I cut one of them out. I don't really need it here. I don't need it at home here because I pretty much have things set the way I want them set, and they're not going to change by much. But teaching over at the Woodcraft store, somebody's always going to monkey around with something over there. So I made one of those little blocks just so that when I go in to teach my class, ouch, 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 don't jam it under your damn fingernail. Then it's set. I set up the arm, and I can go grind away to grind the bowl gouge and the spindle gouge. Spindle gouge, I cheat a little bit on that one. I don't really have a scientific answer for that, but when you set the bowl gouge, the setup that I'm using now, I actually do move the arm, but to go from this, 55 to 60 degree angle, using like Rudy's setup block to set where everything's at, I can switch over to my 1/2 inch spindle gouge, or 3/8, it doesn't really matter. I can switch over to the spindle gouge just by putting a block of wood in that little V arm. They're sort of a pain to cut because the people at One Way don't believe in 90 degree corner in there. But it's about 1 1/8 inches thick with a little rare earth magnet on the back. So I just slide it in there. The magnet keeps it in place. It pushes the barrel grind that much further forward to grind this 40 degree angle on a spindle gouge. So it makes it very simple, very repeatable. That's what I try and teach the people. I'm like, this is repeatable. I said, it's not rocket science. You don't have to think, well, what did that guy say? It works. That's my philosophy on the majority of that stuff is the simpler it is, the more repeatable it is, the better off you are. Whether it's the angle that Joe Blow down the street likes, or whether it's what you've gotten accustomed to. Because there certainly is no right or wrong angle to any of it. It becomes a personal preference kind of a thing, but you have to have, in my opinion, you need to have a place to start to figure out what your personal preference might be, if that makes sense. So we're back to our favorite task of the day. Sand, sand, and sand some more. These, especially when they're small, I'm going to sand this wing without the lathe running. This is end grain. This is where there's going to be the most likely places that you're going to have any disturbed grain, torn grain, anything like that. So if I sand that just by hand, I'm power sanding it, but I go up along that edge. It makes it safer for you, for one, but it also removes a whole lot more material quicker than when it's spinning. you actually in a real small natural edge bowl like this, we could actually sand this entire bowl just by doing this. Now, all I'm doing is keeping a little pressure on the chuck. It spins it all by itself. The drill will spin it. Get out to the outside edge. Do it by hand. Try not to run over the outside edge like that. And it sands just fine. And it's almost, in some ways, it's definitely much safer because when we start spinning this by spinning it, say 700 RPMs, something like that, now we have to be aware where our fingers are at. Correct. Now, you brought up a good point. Where are we at? We're on end camera. So if you look at the back of my gouge, this is the bowl gouge. This is the half-inch bowl gouge. You can see that I've relieved this back heel part. And depending on the curve of the bowl, on something like this, especially when it's smaller, I could have taken that heel down further, make this bevel shorter. It will turn a tighter curve. It only comes into play on the inside of the bowl. The outside of the bowl doesn't make any difference. But when you go to the inside, I take the heel off. Doesn't have to be off, a ton of it, but it needs to have some of it removed so that when you get to the bottom or close to the bottom and start to make the curve, you don't dig the heel of the gouge into the side of the wood, and you will leave compression lines. That being said, once again, the more of that heel you take away, and when you go back to the grinder to sharpen your tool, you sort of have to keep in mind that you remove that material because it's going to grind quicker now on the nose of the tool where that has less material removed. I do some of these little natural edge bowls like this that are about this size, maybe even a little bit smaller, and I'll do them from green wood to finished dimensions, finished thickness in one shot, and then let them dry. And then as I showed, what I showed you earlier on the sanding part on the inside, that's how I would sand the whole entire thing rather than it spinning. Because if it's spinning, it just bounces all over the place. So you can get away with doing that on something along those lines. Sort of very easily. So that's through to 400. I don't have any 600 out, so I'm not going to go any further than 400. I don't think I have any. Nope. So that should be good enough. Now, the only other thing we're going to do is take a little bit of back over here. Don't really need the dust collector running. When you're doing these, all this sanding has created not so much on a little bit on the outside, but this inside edge now has become a razor blade. What's that one? 400. Full size piece of 400. And I just go along and I just knock that razor blade sharp edge off of it. I'm not going to try and round it over much. I want to keep the appearance of what it is. So just a little bit of light touch on the outside. We'll do the outside first. Go the whole way around it. Like I said, this is kind of like chipped and chunked away. Some of the cambium layer and took some material, some of the wood with it, which is kind of Kind of one of the reasons I don't mess much with the oaks because they're just so unforgiving and so easily to chip things away. And if there's anything that feels too rough, then just sand it back a little bit by hand. Okay. Yes, you could. You could also use, I have a bunch of it and very seldom ever think of using it. You can also use this stuff. This is, I don't remember whose make this is. Got this from Vince's Wooden Wonders. Everybody and their brother makes this stuff. It's the foam back sandpaper, but you could use that just as well. All I'm trying to do is clean up some of this stuff. It's when the bar came off of this, like I say, it kind of took chunks. I mean, I'm not trying to make this really smooth because I want to leave the colors and whatnot in it. But that's another, I mean, that's certainly another avenue to go as far as that goes. Um, you just buy that stuff. You can go to whichever Rockler Woodcraft. They tell me actually the Festool brand in that is actually quite good, and it's not like the rest of their stuff that would break the bank, which is always a plus with those people. Have a little, oh, it is probably a bug hole. No, I'll show you that one now. I did that one first tonight because once again it had to be just trying to get the, the bug guts out of there a little bit. Not that when the super glue hits it, it'll make it hard as a rock, but good enough. Once again, the problem with that again is to try and get the corner of the sandpaper in there a little bit. Because anywhere where there's any of that kind of stuff like that, and little bug holes or whatever, definitely want to try and do something along that line there of getting just the corner of the sandpaper. Not a lot. You want to leave it sort of as a feature, I guess you'd say. Try and get all the crap out of it, maybe. Kind of the wonders of when you sand any of this stuff that any sharp edges just become sharper. So you got to be aware of that. You don't want to give this bowl to somebody and their little kid sticks because somebody's if there's a hole or something like that, somebody is always going to stick their fingers into it, along it, whichever. So you want to try and prevent somebody from getting cut or something like that. Wouldn't be very nice, put it that way. Something like that. I mean, if you wanted to be really fussy about it or something, maybe you could fill it a little bit, but becomes an issue of how much how much screwing around you want to do for a little bowl. And I have some big ones that I've done, um, filled in some big voids like that, but they kind of always look filled. if that makes any sense. Good enough. This one we can actually finish. Oh, and and question is, yeah, that'll work this time. I normally finish the outside first. Just kind of another one of my little weird ways, I guess you'd say. It works for me. Um, there certainly is no. Well, my reasoning is mainly because of what I'm using for the finish. So we're going to do my normal super glue finish. So if I was to already do the inside and then flip it around to do the outside, then I'm really taking the chance that things are going to stick fast. So I have my jam block on there. I'm going to put a piece of wax paper, simple household wax paper over top of that. Stops any super glue from coming through because there'll be places in here that there's little end grain places that could possibly come through. Oh yeah, they do. Fillings, crowns. There's a retired dentist at my local turning club, and he made the comment the one day, not that he needed any money because he's a very wealthy man to start with. He's like, yeah, if I want to buy a couple new tools that'd be rather expensive, he said, I'll just tell somebody I need a crown. He said because there's a ton of money in make doing the crowns and things like that on people. But like, yeah, what a crook. Typical finish, 3408, piece of felt underneath there. Nice liberal coat all the way around. If it was a bigger piece, I would definitely do the end grain first, but this is a little guy. End grain is going to take more material all the way around, inside and out. So get it down just over that curve down there. And of course, we left a little V groove in there. So if I put a drop of super glue in there, I would just let it run right around. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of, to me when it comes some of that stuff. Dentists, doctors, take your pick, whichever one. Um, I swear half the time they come up with something just so they can make more money. I had an issue years ago with had a little bit of something growing, a little bit of a mass they called it, growing in my stomach. And of course, they want to send you to 9 million different doctors, and they thought it was cancer. Of course, they finally ruled that out. They had sent me for some radiation treatments on that part, and my wife gave me a bunch of grief to one day because of the forgot to put some in. The one doctor that we were going to see, actually, there was another doctor called me on the way to see this one, and I'm like, I don't even know who you're talking. I said, I don't know who you are and who you're talking about. Oh, you didn't go see this guy yet? No. So we went, saw this guy. I'm like, so you're sending me to so and so? He's like, well, yeah, I am. How do you know that? I'm like, because they already called me to set the appointment. He's like, oh, I guess I'm a little slow. I said to him, he was a young, I don't know, Indian kind of guy. I said, so, I always told my wife, I said, yeah, I said, Saturday night poker game, they needed more money. So I asked this guy, I said, so what time's the poker game start Saturday night? He looked at me and said, do you play? My wife lost it. She goes, I can't believe you asked him such a question. I said, but his answer was correct. I said, they're all to get in it together. I said, well, this is my buddy down the road here. We'll send you down to him, and he'll take some more of your money, take some more of your insurance money. And I said, that was living proof that day. Uh, I didn't get any sense. What I'm looking for is I see whether I got any super glue down around that rim because I'm going to put that back in the truck. If I did, just as simple, just put a little bit of uh, paste wax on the face of the jaws, on the inside of the jaws, so that super glue don't stick to it. So now we can go and do the inside. So we can go back over to there. Put our little piece of felt in there. Well, they ended up doing surgery and taking the mass out, but it was several months worth of screwing around. Different doctor, every one of them wants to do. They send a scope down, put you to sleep, send a scope down your throat, take a little piece of this mass, or do something along those lines. Here's where I will do the just the rim and just sort of dab it on, just to seal up some of that stuff. Make sure we're totally covered on the inside. Clean our bottle off. And then we'll wipe off the excess. Because we don't want any leftovers behind. We want it to be dry, sort of dry to what it looks like, even though it's going to have a little bit of shine to it. We want to make sure that we don't have any left behind. Because it will not dry smooth. This particular one, it will not lay down flat. It'll sit on the surface instead of. I like things that are quick and easy, and this is about as quick and easy as what I've ever found. That's why I use it. I'm a distributor of it. That way I have it all the time. I don't have to try and get a hold. There was a guy that sold it in Georgia, and health issues got the best of him. So, like, you can't get it, so I can do that. We can do that. So we go back overhead. So there's our little oak bowl outside or inside. Got a little blue streak that we filled, which was a big crack. Back as that one goes the whole way through. So we do have some little cracks that we filled up here. I probably should have been a little bit more energetic and maybe gave them a little bit of a color. Oh, that's right. You said you're over in the UK somewhere. So you probably actually have maybe better insurance than what we do. Um, but yeah. But Phil, you were asking, this is the bowl from, let's back out a bit. This is the bowl from last week. This is, or yeah, was it last week? Yeah, I think so. This is the hackberry bowl that has the black streak. We had to fill all there was lots of cracks in that. This has not been finished yet. I did the outside. I played around this week a little bit with the outside. Um, I think I actually even made a little bit of a cut to see whether there was more of the cracks going to show up, and they did. So I was able to get all them filled. But when we did the inside this evening, then there was actually another crack showed up there and a couple little places that didn't get filled. So this one now is once this super glue totally cures in a day or so, um, this one is ready to be sanded on the inside and then finished. The outside is ready to be finished. Hmm. Let's see, what time is it? 10 minutes of 7. Probably should actually quit, but I'm gonna turn one of these around. I have a couple ice cream scoops to make. I don't think they're actually due till June. My memory serves me correctly. This is some very curly maple drilled drilled and tapped. Oh, yeah. That one I'd have to actually measure it. That one I think probably is around 10 inches across at the top. It's a wide point and two deep, which if you go back and watch the replay of this, or you go over to the YouTube channel and watch that, watch it on there, um, makes it very difficult to get to the bottom of them. It's one of them rules that is one of the rules that I have learned. It wasn't my rule. It was I think one of the people I took a class with. Are like, don't go over 50% of the diameter. Stay under 50%. You're probably better at about 40% of the diameter, something like that. Because when you go over it, then you have trouble making a good curve, for one. And number two, on something like that bowl, it becomes too deep. And to make the curve, you got to use a bunch of different tools to get to the very bottom of it. And it works. It does work, especially doing. Well, it doesn't really matter whether you're doing a natural edge bowl or um, a traditional style bowl. I mean, it either way, it does well. And usually, the problem with most people is the reason they're going to try and utilize every bit of that piece of wood is because maybe they've paid money for that piece of wood, so they don't want to sacrifice a little bit of wood to create a better looking finished piece. Like I say, this is going to be a bring it in close. You can see it. Bring it in real close. You can see it. You can see the figure in that. This is maple. This is hard maple. Figure all the way through it, except a little bit up here at this end. But this gets like a almost like a ferrule up at that end. This should look, and I have three of these blanks. that are pretty much all the same. So it should come out looking pretty sharp. And it'll be another one of those situations where we'll get to play with some dies and things like that. So first order of business, we'll get rid of the corners. Helps tighten the tailstock up and lock it in place so it doesn't back up a little bit. I want to be kind of gentle with this because when you get any of this really highly figured wood, kind of has a tendency to maybe be a little bit on the chippy side. So if we're just maybe not go at things quite as hard as what you might want to do. Just get it to the round, which we're not there yet. And I sort of switched cutting styles. I'm no longer sort of up there. I'm over, you can see I'm over on an angle. So now I'm using the bevel as my cutting support. Becomes a little bit more cumbersome going to the right. But you do have two hands, so you can use your left hand. Not going to kill you. If anything, it'll make you a better turner. Cut there is actually getting a little bit big. So I just slow the feed rate down, let it cut. It's really all it's about. Matching your feed rate with the speed of the piece, the speed the piece of wood is going around at. And now we're round. And it chipped a little bit out the end. It doesn't really matter. But our lovely curl goes the whole way around, which is what we were after, or looking for. So, the piece, next order of business. Yes, you need to use, although I know a professional wood turner that is left-handed, but the bottom line is you have to. Yeah, I've had a couple. I've had a couple people come and take a class with me. Thank goodness it was only a couple that were left-handed. Because I mean, I will do some things turning left-handed. Some things I should work harder at. But I just, like everybody else, I'm kind of lazy when it comes to some of that. So this thing gets this little ferrule on it, on the ice cream scoop. Um, Not my design. It wouldn't be my design. Because they left a shoulder for the ferrule to go up against, which is about 1/8 of an inch thick. So we needed a measurement from the bottom of that to the bottom lip of this, because we don't want this to bottom out and touch the wood before it hits the outside of this ferrule. Probably the only complicated part of making these ice cream scoops that there is. Um, Most of this is just strictly a parting tool. So we'll get it down at least close to where we want it before I even pick them up. Make it 2 cuts wide, just so there's more room for the calipers. Calipers are set for about the diameter of them. I'll start out here on the end and just gently go in until they slide over top of it. Go back and widen it out that little bit, right down to there. Maybe knock that sharp edge off, and we'll stop. And we will. Should have kept the ferrule over here. And check our fit. We're nowhere close, which is good. Because golden rule number 1, we can always take more wood off, but it's a little bit hard unless you really like jigsaw puzzles and want to pick that up and try and figure out how you're going to glue it back onto something. Doesn't really work overly well. You can go in just a little bit. Both of them. Can also give it a little chamfer on the end, just the last 1/8 of an inch or less, so that we can get it to fit. So now the chamfer really helps you because now you can see, maybe, should be able to see, that it goes over that chamfer. And if I push hard on it and spin it, sort of trying something along that line, it'll actually, probably the camera draw probably doesn't really pick it up, but I can darken it with my pencil. It actually left me a burnish line, and it'll show me exactly where it needs to be. Yep. That actually goes back to my buddy Rudolph Lopez. He's from Florida, and I think this lady, I couldn't even tell you what her name was anymore. Made these. But if you know anybody that sews a little bit, a baby bib with some Velcro on it, and probably all the baby bibs of today have Velcro on them anyhow. And it would wrap around your ankle and keep your top of your shoes covered. In other words, keeps any and all wood chips of that kind. Not a well, it's snug enough. It doesn't have to be super snug. But like I say, not my idea, not my thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I say, he lives in Florida, so it's warm, hot year round. So yeah, I mean, he used it for everything. You go out and mow the grass, weed whack, and things like that. It keeps the crap out of your shoes. And like I say, it was pretty daggone good idea. They weren't super expensive. I remember right. I think they were like $20 at that time. This is kind of another one of these projects that pieces that I feel the simplicity is the kind of the root of where I like to go with them. Done some of these that have double beads on them, but a simple chamfer down here I think just does just as well. I made a line around that ring. And all I've done now is go down what I've done is went down to my line, or actually removed the line because you know it's going to be inside of that line. So it just sits flush up against there. And the other thing I can do would be to chamfer or cut this back a little bit so that it's going to sit out here on that ring, that part of the ring. Looks like there's enough room. Once we get, I'll cut that little chamfer and then I'll actually thread that thing on, which if it's not really that difficult if it's if this would be too long for that, you could take a little bit off of this end. You just have to watch because it is threaded and it has very long threads on it. Another one of those projects that multiple ways of screwing it up, and there's multiple ways of fixing any little boo-boos or mistakes that you may make along the way. These things have very long threads in them. Actually, I don't think I ran the tap back in there since I put super glue, so it might not want to thread very well. Screw on. It's going to do all right. They're very long. Versus, I got an upcoming class, because I like to try and they like me to do it that way, kits that they would sell in the store, which Ice Cream Scoop's one of them. I do an Ice Cream Scoop class. Doing a pizza cutter. The pizza cutter kit, I can't say that I'm not really liking the pizza cutter kit. I don't know why whoever designed it that way. I mean, these have an inch and a half or something along those lines of threads. And they're also 3/8 inch threads, which is like standard for all kind of mandrels that's out there for doing bottle stoppers and other things. And it's got nice long threads. And the pizza cutter upstairs. The pizza cutter has threads that are only about 3/4 of an inch long, and they're 5/16 rather than 3/8. And they're not very, I don't know how you put it nicely. They're not very good. I didn't think. I made one. I also was at the Woodcraft store today. They were doing a demonstration. One portable sawmill company was there and doing some demonstrating because they're now selling them. But I got some different threaded inserts to use with them. So I have to try that before the class comes because it's this is easy to drill it, tap it, away you go. But when you get down to 5/16 and you only have 3/4 of an inch of depth to it, they want to use the metal threaded inserts in them, and it just kind of becomes a little bit cumbersome. Well, that's what I was surprised, and this is a 4-inch diameter pizza cutter, which is quite big as far as I'm concerned. And they have two different kits. I think they have a 4-inch and a 2.5 or something like that. I didn't pick which kit. I didn't specify which kit. I just told the young lad that sets up the classes and that. I'm like, oh, we'll do a pizza cutter. I didn't figure he was going to use the big one, but lo and behold, that's what he decided to use and priced out the class using the bigger one. To me, it's a little bit too big, but it wouldn't necessarily be my first choice of which one to use. Put it that way. I'm going to round this over back here on the back end of this, but we're definitely going to lose 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch back here anyhow. We'll just get some of it out of the road because this is entirely too fat as it stands right now. These I kind of adopted a simple philosophy with these that they sort of have a bit of a taper from the back to the front. Don't know whether that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but just kind of the way I do them. One of the ways, simple way. Once again, as I said before, simple is good. It's actually about time to switch over to the spindle gouge, though. You can see the lovely curl that's still there. A little bit, a little bit of picked up grain, a couple different places. Once we get very close to the final shape, which is the hard part of working with any of this really highly figured wood, is nice sharp tools, light cuts. At this point, I'm more into the roughing stages. I have to watch for me making some of this stuff because, as you can see, I grip it with my hand and say, "Well, that feels pretty good," and then I take it up to the critic upstairs, and she's like, "Not everybody has giant-sized hands." I'm like, "I do," but it usually all works out good. We do have to keep in mind we do have a 3/8 inch hole underneath there, so we don't want to make this area too super thin. But now I did switch over to my spindle gouge, so now we'll be making lighter, preciser cuts. Yeah. Now you wait. We're gonna get this pretty quickly to the part where we'll sand it up a little bit, and then we'll start dyeing it because this will get dye on it. Not that you couldn't finish something like this natural. I mean, it would look very pretty just natural, but color always seems to stick out better. Here's your left-handed turning, because now I'm using this is a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, so it's longer, much longer than my little 3/8 that I would use most of the time. So the handle can get in my road. I think I'm still a little bit on the hefty side. We're still not liking that cutting. We might actually have to switch over and raise the tool rest up. It's cutting fine coming down this hill, coming down this direction, because we always want to cut largest to smallest, largest to smallest. But coming in when it's curly wood, evidently there's some of that grain that's running that direction, sort of, versus what you would think it would be. That makes sense. You take this down just a little bit more. It is. Nope, this is maple. This is it is curly maple. I am going to go over and sharpen this. Anyway, I'll just use the smaller one. It's still not cooperating in there. Yes, it is. But beautiful grain doesn't always like to cooperate and cut cleanly. It feels like that cut clean. Maybe that other spindle gouge is not as sharp as what it could be. Better. Still a little bit of picked up there. A lot of picked up down through here. But the problem with the curly, and you'll see here in a little bit, problem with the highly figured woods is this, those streaks going across there are probably twice as hard as what this is in between the streaks. So that means that as the tool goes across it, it wants to pick up some of that softer material. Normally that just, most of the time that's just going to mean that there's going to be a whole lot more sanding involved than what I want it to be. So we'll just keep nibbling away at it because we're still a little fat on the back end of it, I think. I just would like to get it a whole lot cleaner cut than what it is right now. It actually feels like it did. You can, surprisingly enough, when you touch something like that, when it's spinning, you can feel it. Still a little bit of it there. Not as bad as what it was. I think we're still smidgen on the fat side back here. I think we'll trim a little bit more of that down. Maybe a little bit more. Now we got to blend those two. Nice, super light cut. Take my sweet old time. Fade away to nothing. Feels like it's smooth. Tiny little bits of chip out yet, but that's definitely, that is sandable rather than what it was doing earlier. So, I think we're actually going to sand this part, and I'll flip it around and put it in, because this is threaded. I can put it on the stopper mandrel. We'll take off the rest of that end, and then we'll just finish sanding just that little bit on the end. It should run true when I do that, but the key word is should. Does it always? Of course not. So the less I have to do when we go to that point, the better we will be. So our slower speed down considerably. Cut it in about half. It's about 900 RPM. Whatever it takes, if I can put a fair amount of pressure on there without it starting to heat up my fingers like it was right there. I mean, you want the sandpaper to work. And this we can sort of wrap the sandpaper about halfway around it anyhow. So it sands quickly and easily. Well, I don't know that would necessarily. I guess it could be an unusual. I mean, it's a maple, but nobody's ever really been able to answer that question to me anyhow on why some of it would have the curl in it. It's generally what happens to the tree as it's growing. Um, it's definitely sought after by lots of um, different professions, wood wise. Yeah, and working with small parts of it, small pieces of it. Yeah, that would be easier. That would be easier to come by than stuff like this. This is started out about 1.75 inches thick, something like that. I have a bunch of lumber, be like 1 inch stock lumber. That's curly maple that I walked into a super deal many years ago, and I have a whole bunch of that. But it's not necessarily. I get to use some of it in the wood turning. I did make a dresser for my granddaughter with it. The stuff is a pain in the bazooka to work with. Well, actually, and now you're really testing my memory. Some of them parts of the world, over in your parts of the world, they would call it. Yeah, well, the any of the figured woods are very difficult to work with. Whether it's, I mean, turning it is not as bad as doing like furniture work with it. Yes, yes. Like I said, that's why I wanted to sand the majority of that. You can see it's not going to want to spin totally true, even though I turned it between centers. So that should make it true. But it also doesn't mean I didn't clean up that face, which is half the problem. Tell you what we'll do. We'll turn it on. Then I'll bring the live center engaged. And it will find center. So it's running reasonably true. Doesn't need to be perfectly true, because all we're going to work on is this little bit down here at the end. We've sanded most of the rest of that. And it being out of true, out of round, will not affect the sanding of the rest of it at all. But I have to finish cutting down here and be able to sand the end before we can put some color to it. And be nice and gentle. Work it down to just a little bit of nothing. Back off the tailstock. Itty bitty cuts. Let it cut. This is probably the most important time, is get close to the center and basically stop. Maybe like wiggle the tool up and down a little bit or something like that to get the final cut. You're going to have to make one more little cut across there because it left me a ridge right there. So now we have to be careful. I can support it a little bit with my left hand, even though it wants to bounce a little bit. Basically, just get rid of that ridge, probably, and create another one. That was my mistake. I should have trued that end up there. Those easels usually spin quite nicely, usually. I was talking and not paying attention to what I was doing. So that's going to mean considerable more sanding down here to make this end what it needs to be. This will blend it all together. And it doesn't make any difference that it's, the only people that's going to know this thing is sort of out of round is you people that are watching me do it. I was telling them earlier, I did a pizza cutter for an upcoming class, and it's a whole different setup than what these are. It's a very small, very short bolt that goes back into the wood, and it goes into a metal insert, which I did my best on getting the metal insert in there straight, which I found out that I did not even get it close to being straight. But once again, it was turned between centers, so I only had this little bit down here, and that one there I had a really little bit to take away, and I just basically sanded it away because I put it on they were only 5/16 threads, so I put it, I didn't know how to kind of mandrel that would be 5/16, so next best thing in the world of using a little brain power, as what I would call it, was to just take a 5/16 bolt, cut the head off of it, and put it in the drill truck for on the lathe, which is kind of the easier, cheater way of doing it maybe, and threaded it on and did just what I'm doing here. That thing was so caught. I was taking far out around. I couldn't even hardly sand it this way. Yeah, that's right. This is one of these fields that whatever it takes to make it work. That's the way I look at it. Especially if you can be a little bit creative, maybe. So, what color do we do this one? Take, yes, sir. Makes it a little challenging to turn, but yeah, that's sort of the. I kind of have the philosophy on a lot of this kind of stuff like that is that simpler the better, and knowing full well that with as much curly wood as on this, if this was a plain wood, a plain cherry or walnut or something like that, a lot of them I would put two or three little beads up here and then swoop down and basically make the same shape. But this has got curl running the whole way up through it, so there's no No point in going any different, I think. So, back to what color did we want to do? I think. A lot of times I do black first, but I don't. Correct. So I think I'm going to start with the dark blue, see what it does. The liquid I sprayed on there was denatured alcohol. What I wanted it to do was open the pores of the wood back up so that the dye soaks in further. This is an alcohol-based dye. So we'll start out with the dark blue. And I've only sanded to 320, I guess it was. That I sanded to. I'm not going to go up over this rim onto this front little chamfer up here, because if I do that with the dark that's all end grain, it'll just soak it in and remain dark. And we won't have any contrast, so to speak. So that's the dark blue. Take my little piece of paper towel here, my alcohol, spray a little bit on my paper towel, because this is the chestnut spirit stains, which has a little bit of shellac in it. They use the shellac as a little bit of a binder. So if I go over it with the alcohol, it's doing two things for me. It's pulling off some of the shellac. It's also taking some of the dye back off. As you can see, I spin it. We got light spots, dark spots. Like I said, we've sanded to 320 so far. So now we're going to sand. I probably will start right over again at 320. Here's a gray area. I'm going to use my gloves. I'm going to keep my gloves on. Slow the speed down a little bit more. Note to anybody that does that. Personally, when you come and take a turning class with me, you will not wear gloves to turn. But finishing is kind of a gray area. Number one, I don't want to keep taking them on and off. But I will tell you that something like this is all smooth. I was doing something a little while back, and it had a little bit of a point to it, and it started to come off, and I went to push it back on. The point came back in here onto the glove, literally grabbed a hold of that like that, and spun it around so quick it wasn't even funny. It pulled the piece off of however I had it mounted, but it was just as easily going to wrap my fingers right around it, or wrap my hand around it. So it is a bit dangerous to sand with gloves, even, especially the rubber gloves. So we're trying to create some light and dark. This is one of these areas where you do it till you think it looks right, and if it doesn't look right, you start over and do it again. It does take a fair amount of sanding to actually get the whole way back to the dye, back to bare wood, but it's not impossible. So now we have light and dark areas. Take our paper towel and wipe it off. At 400. Now the other issue now is we've left all the scratches are running in a circle, and you can actually, you may not see them on camera, but you can actually see the scratch lines in the dye. So we'll go back with the grain a little bit. This is only 320. I'm actually doing this a little bit early in some ways, but we'll get the scratch lines going in with the grain, as well as we're removing a little bit more of the color. So let's hit it with a little bit of 400, which will take a little bit more of the color off, not a lot. That'll just make it smoother because we want it to be smooth when it's done. We can stop and give it the quick little fan going the other way. And you could probably could actually almost stop right there, because if you were to put a clear finish over top of that, it would probably look kind of neat all on its own. It's showing the figure, but it doesn't necessarily suit what I want it to look like. So on to the next color, which is still going to be another blue, I think. That's where we're going. I think this is the path we're going to go down. The first one was what they consider just blue. The second one is a what they call royal blue, which is more of a bluish green. So when we go over that, this will soak in, this will make the dark blue darker again, but will highlight the areas that were white from sanding. That makes a lick of sense. So it's still, at this point now, we'll do the little bit of end grain up here. So that made it sort of pop out a bit. We could always give it a little taste of alcohol, which makes them blend together even more yet. Give it a little rub down. We're going to eliminate some of the lighter blue, which is going to make that look even better yet. And we also just got rid of the shellac. We took that much of the blue off. Like I said before, if we don't like it, we can always go back and do other things to it. Well, I'm a natural grain guy, but primarily because I don't get that much of this material. I'm not willing to spend a small fortune to get that kind of, to buy that kind of material. Um, it just so happened I run into some of this stuff in the wonderful world of picking stuff up, and when you run into it, that's when you cut it in. You generally cut that into blanks of some sort, just for this kind of project. Now, if we were so minded, we could actually take and this usually doesn't work for me, so we'll probably end up sanding things back. Put little hints of other colors in. In this case, it's yellow. You say, well, that doesn't really look great. One of the people that I took a class with, he's like a master at this kind of stuff. He comes up with some concoctions that say, well, that ain't gonna look right. And, at the end of the day, it looks a lot better than what I can do. Once again, we're gonna go back with our alcohol. We're gonna spray over them. We're gonna spray it pretty hard, which makes that yellow blend into the blue. It's going to give us a bluish yellow green effect, maybe. Once again, if we don't like it, we're going to go back over it with something else. And now we'll probably go back to the royal blue and put a wash coat of that over top and see what it does. See whether it mutes the yellow down is really what I'm after. I'd buy that. I think that's, I mean, yellow and blue makes green, so it's got green into yellow. I just don't know whether I should try and add a little bit more to it or not. Keep going back with the alcohol because I need to get rid of the shellac part. It also helps to blend things, lighten things up. There's some areas up here that's really kind of dark, but those areas that are really kind of dark right there is a little area that does not really have any of the figure in it, or very little of the figure in it. I don't know. This is usually where I get in trouble. Where are we at? 400. I usually get them too dark, usually for my taste. You can see there's still a little bit of shellac in there. That's the dark spots that show up. So a little bit of hand sanding to lighten up some areas again. And this is where we might just call it an evening and let it sit overnight. Because right now everything is still wet, so it really kind of like makes it pop on screen. But when you see it up close and personal, it's really hard to see whether you have something that you truly like or not. I did have another color blue too. I should try that. Or orange or something. This is where I'd like to have my wife come down and help with some of this stuff because she's a decorative painter, so blending colors would be her specialty, not mine. And I couldn't finish this tonight anyhow. I couldn't put the finish on because I will use my super glue finish, and that's a no-no over top of this right now. And you can see as I spin it around, the camera probably doesn't show it. Maybe it does. You see those teeny tiny that come in there? You see those teeny tiny little black dots? That's some of the liquid, the alcohol, and the dye trying to sneak back out of the wood. And alcohol and super glue, because denatured alcohol would be distilled, so there's still evidently a certain amount of moisture, water stays behind. So it'll make the super glue set up instantly when it hits it, which is definitely what I don't want. I don't know. It's got some character to it. I know that. I think I probably should have left well enough alone with the yellow. Like I said before, if you don't like it, take it back off. Or at least take some of it back off. Going back to 320. Now we'll hit it with 400 if I can find a place where it's not gummed up. See, even at that, you could probably actually leave them just like that and it would probably look kind of neat, but doesn't necessarily look neat to me. So ideally, I want the lights. What's light streaks now is what I want to stand out when I'm done. I never even used this one. This is just a different dye. This is actually from Craft Supply USA, but it's an alcohol based dye as well. Looks like it's a totally different color blue than what I have. Lots of little bits of paper towel you go through. Definitely don't do this without gloves on. This would take days to come off. Oh, look at that. That is some bright ass blue. That's going to hide it too much though. I think that is very, that is a very bright blue. Kind of neat though. All these little towels are getting laid back here. I will take them all and drape over the edge of the trash can. This time we'll put the alcohol in the paper towel and see what happens when we wipe back over it. Well, so far I'm liking what I see. So it's like that different color blue. You see it's pulling a lot of it back off. And it's mainly pulling it off the figured area because that's harder material, so it doesn't absorb as much. I don't know. What do y'all think? I think I like that better. I think I'm gonna let that dry and see about it from there. I'm gonna do this rim. I need to go to the grocery store yet. Tomorrow would be a work day. The other thing we can do with this stuff, if your shop would permit it, mine would not. There's too much salt. There's too much chips and dirt and everything else in here. But since this is alcohol based, you could actually light it on fire and keep it spinning. The one class that I went to, that we did that in his class. But in my case, I have a bench underneath my lathe, so like I said, I think that's right where we're gonna stop at, and we're gonna be done for the evening. Yeah, next week's another week. We'll do some more. Like I said, I have two more. Yeah, I have two more of them to do. I have three ice cream scoops total to do. So I have two more of the same type of blanks thing, really super curly stuff. And they were free. They came from actually the recycling center in the town that I live in. So I mean they were free. They've been around a long time, but yeah, that was some free material. So I think it'll look kind of neat. Give it a chance to dry, and I'll come back next week and probably maybe give it a little light sand with some like 800 grit sandpaper or something like that. Because I'm sure it probably the amount of alcohol and everything else we put on there, it definitely probably raised the grain on it again. And of course, I'll have to get the word from the critic upstairs sometime this week to see what she has to say about it. I personally think it looks neat, but either here or there. But that is going to be it for me this evening. Anybody have any other questions, comments? I see a lot of you are on here from Twitch. This is also being broadcast the same at the same time, same time on YouTube under Caps Creations as well. So if you'd like to go back and watch anything at some other given point, it's recorded and on there as well. So other than that, we are going to call it a day. Oh, you are quite welcome. Like I said, we'll be back next week. I've been getting on a little bit earlier on Saturdays. I was doing better at at 6 o'clock, but somewhere between 5 and 6 Eastern time is when you generally get something started. And just like tonight, this will get finished, and there's a big bowl back here that needs finished. So till then, y'all have a great week.